Trial Subcommittee meeting 30th of April open. I'd like to welcome all the subcommittee members. And the first on the list is apologies. We have one apology, and that's the mayor. Any other apologies? So, I'd like to move that apologies have been received and accepted. Can I have that second, please? John? All those in favour? Aye. All right. Carried. There's the declaration of interest. Any matters or concerns here? There's that's been sent out Microsoft Teams. And also there's a hard copy here. Urgent items not on the agenda. I've received any urgent items. Nothing's come to my notice. No. Thank you. Minutes of the meeting. Of the subcommittee meeting on the 3rd of December 2020. Will someone like who was present like to move that they are a true and current record of the meeting? Oh, cool. Thank you. Tim. A second. I'll second that myself. I approve my digital signature to be added to be confirmed to the West Coast Wilderness Trail Subcommittee meeting minutes of the 3rd December 2020. Action list number 5, Simon Bastian.
So, good afternoon, committee members. Let's take you through the 4 outstanding actions on the subcommittee action list. The Milltown Weir crossing. I'm looking at alternate routes to be presented to the subcommittee for discussion. This has been put on hold until further analysis has been done. This topic is also covered in the confidential section today. The Hanapua Bridge highway crossing. Thanks to John Strange pointing out the hazards associated with that crossing. We did a site visit last Friday. It's fair to say there is some significant hazards, particularly line of sight, and also managing cyclists coming off the trail and not enough room to manoeuvre prior to getting onto the highway. So we have asked Stantec to come up with a revised safety plan for that zone. I think we need to extend this action to the other 2 areas further down the trail that go onto state highway or road crossings. So we'll do that as a separate piece of work as another action. West Coast Wilderness Trail 20-year work plan. So that has been included in Council's long-term plan. If you recall, we put some urgent works forward. So that has been locked down as part of the consultation document to go out for long-term plan process. And just a confirmation of insurance of structures. All council structures are covered on the trail are covered by the Major Great Rides Emergency Funding Protocol. So if we had some major event happen, it would potentially be covered by that fund. Any questions, committee members?
Okay. No questions there. Would someone like to move that the update action list be received? Nicole? And second? John? All those in favour? Aye. The presentation is from Jackie Gurdon.
Thank you. What I'd like to cover today is some of the key things that the Wilderness Trail Trust has been involved with. Just update you on several things. The very first one I want to talk about is health and safety. And with the incident that happened in Nelson in Spooners on Christmas Eve, where the lady lost her life in quite a straightforward part of the trail, just through ducking a branch and coming off her bike and dying. It's really highlighted for me some of the things where we've got potential risk, and just making sure that we're right up to date with everything with health and safety on our trail. The key things that came from that for me, thinking about our trail, is the whole maintenance of the trails, and Nelson were able to produce a list of all the maintenance work and dates that areas of the trail had been inspected and actioned. Things like the location signage, so when emergency services, when someone has an accident, they know exactly where they are on the trail, and they can report that through. So things that we probably don't take seriously from a health and safety point of view are things like the distance markers on the trail, and making sure that they can all be read and are all prominent, and some of ours are quite faded. Also access to the trail, if emergency vehicles need to get in there, you know, the bollards, can they be removed? Do we know where all the keys and padlocks and is all that sort of thing functioning? And the other issue we know is obviously coverage and cell phone coverage, which hopefully we'll have across some of the key parts of the trail by the end of the year. So with those in mind, I particularly have sort of been much more conscious of some of these sort of things, even though our Trail Trust isn't responsible for health and safety on the trail at all. To me, because I was sort of that link point, I've been just raising these things. So last week, I did a ride over with the Grey District Council staff on the Grey District leg of the trail, and we identified a whole lot of things that they immediately have prepared a report and are looking at actioning with that. And we've just had a discussion now about the whole incident reporting when there is an incident on the trail, and really trying to connect and coordinate that through. Because at the moment, our trail companies are probably recording their incidents, but they're not necessarily coming through to our trail management and governance. So just putting those things in place from a health and safety perspective. We have to do reports, or it's actually Western District Council that do the reports quarterly through to New Zealand Cycle Trails on our any incidents that we get on the trail. And I think just working on this process a little bit more and connecting it all together, I think it's really important. So from a Trail Trust perspective, as I said, we don't manage health and safety, but we sort of that glue in it, and we're out on the trail, and we get a lot of the feedback from riders back to us. And that's really where a lot of this has come from as well, with the feedback we get from our surveys of people. So that's the first one. The second thing I wanted to talk about was a strategic plan that our Trail Trust has got. We're reviewing that at the moment. The vision that we've got for the trail is really to be the benchmark for excellence in the Naharanga Cycle Trail Network. So that's across all sorts of things. It's across basically how we're being governed and managed, our trail, how we're responding to it. So I'll just talk about the 4 areas of focus. Now these have been our key strategic areas since we wrote our plan a couple of years ago, and there's a few things that the Trust is just fleshing out that it wants to focus on a little bit more. So just to take you through those 4 areas quickly, the governance and management side of it, we're looking actually at the Trust itself, the sustainability and funding, the stakeholders that we work with, the official partners, and then entities like New Zealand Cycle Trails and MB, and just having those good relationships with the management of the trail and sustainability right throughout. The second area of focus is on outstanding rider experience, and that's where we're looking at survey work and the feedback we get, and actually feeding that right back through to any maintenance work or things like the health and safety things that we're picking up now. So we have always been doing this, but definitely looking at making much more of that and how we feed that information back through to the trail owners. Looking at growth in rider numbers on the trail. So we're looking at generic growth. We've been looking at shoulders and winter. And also the family market, and we did a lot of promotional work in those areas last year to bring to elevate those. And we're also looking at the whole area of adaptive bikes. So I'll talk about those a little bit later on. but just the other areas for rider growth, which is our third area, and the fourth area is the economic and social return from the trail. So we're looking there about increasing the spend on the trail and the length of stay, commercial operators, commercial product, and also the support to community groups on the trail and trying to encourage more community involvement in events and things on the trail. So that's the structure of the strategic plan that we're working towards. I know the priorities that we talked about at our last cycle trail meeting were around the increased marketing, and I'll just say now that we've got a collective meeting with Paul Rost of the South and Joe Burney from DWC Tourism to talk about the marketing side of things collectively at the end of this month. We also are looking at events on the trail. So the brainstorm that we had was looking at midwinter events, family events, commercial events, and something around adaptive bikes. And we'd look to build that into DWC's event strategy and funding that it's got. We're looking at the trail enhancements and things like signage. Really keen to see if there can be anything done in that Ross Strait area. And also looking at the financial security of our trust. The promotion of attractions to try and get more dollars spent into those. Any areas that are dangerous that you'll see we're already working a lot more on, and so they're the key areas, and our trust will be discussing those further at our next trust meeting. So our initial meeting was a bit of a sort of a brainstorm at where we're going and what are our priorities going forward. So that's the strategic direction of the trust. Anybody who wants to feed into that, they most certainly can. The other thing I've done is an economic assessment sort of benchmark report. I started doing this 2016-17, and we're trying to set up a sort of a way that we benchmark how well the trail is going. That report is virtually completed. It has 4 sections in it. The first section is a high-level look at what's been happening with the trail and compares it against the previous year. In fact, I've taken it back to the start when we first started doing this. Just some numbers, working on a process that MD used. They believe there's just over 14,000 riders on the trail each year, and doing the full trail, I reckon there's about almost 5,500 people. Spend around $248 per rider per day. Length of stay is around about 3.8 on the actual trail itself, 3.8 days. Direct economic benefit is probably around about $13 million, and the overall benefit for the trail is about $48.5 million, just putting in the multiplier of 3.55 that MBUs. So that's the first area, looks at the high level stats on the trail. Second one, I've actually used our counter data. So we've now had the data in place, and this report is benchmarked back at the end of the year, middle of last year, end of June. So looking at the trail counter information and putting that in each year so that we can use that as our comparative. And the third area is looking at business growth, what new businesses have started on the trail, and what sort of investment they've made. And in that year, there were about $1 million of additional investment. We're also looking at departures on the trail, so from our cycle trail companies that are operating on the trail that we know about, that are our official partners, how many departures and how many riders are they taking per year. That's gone up significantly. A lot of that due to the introduction and expansion of cycle journeys, and also the number of riders on the trail that are part of tours. So we look at both of those, again, substantial increases. We also look at bike hire, how much bike hire we've got on the trail. The big jump has been in e-bikes that went from 17 to 60, and I'll say at the moment on the trail there's probably about 47% of riders on the trail in the last survey that we did, so I've jumped forward to now, that are riding e-bikes. And within the business section of it, I also put up the case studies with the businesses, just very brief at the businesses that have actually expanded on trail. The fourth area is actually the trail performance, and I take that out of the survey work that we do with New Zealand Cycle Trails and look at how we're performing as a trail across all the things that are measured by New Zealand Cycle Trails in there. So the final thing that I wanted to cover off in this presentation is just talking about adaptive bikes. So we've got a trail that is extremely, I was going to say easy, extremely good for people on adaptive bikes. So people with disabilities of various various levels that are on different types of vehicles on the trail, bike vehicles on the trail. And we had a group, I've been working with a gentleman, Ross Ormsby, from the North Island on this for a little while, and then we had a group about a month ago of 20 that wanted to come through, and they had a number. They were a group of specific people with partners that had disabilities. So I went out and did started to do a ride guide for the trail. So I went through, photographed and measured all the areas and all the pinch points on the trail. So I've developed that. I've got it as an informal document at the moment, and we're looking to apply for EDB funding to actually finish that document off in the next August round. Doesn't require a lot more, but right now we've got the document with everything detailed through the trail. I think that there's a real opportunity there for our wilderness trail to expand on that. The key pinch points are really the section from the Woods Road through to Lake Canary, and going up the zigzags up from the Houston Bridge. The rest of it, I was actually quite surprised when I did it, thinking of it with a sort of a disability hat on, how good our trail actually is. So there are points that it is narrow, but most of the trail is actually quite rideable. And I think having that documented now and having that available, when we get that publicly available for people, I think that'll open up the door to a higher market for us. So that's my feedback on the Trail Trust. Yeah, lots happening.
Okay, I've just got a question. First of all, welcome, Paul. Jackie, just on that, when you did the site inspection and the greenhouse, were there any sort of common or significant issues on that greenhouse section there that would be handy to know?
I think the council, they've all been looked at by the council, but there were things like overgrowth across the trail, so you couldn't see, around corners because there was a lot of sort of maintenance and clearing work that needs to happen. There are areas where I think there needs to be compacting done, where it's singled out rather than sort of the two areas with it. Faded numbers, one or two areas that a little bit more directional signage could go, but I personally put a whole lot of new directional signage in around the Blaketown area. It's a fairly good, well-made section of the trail, but it's the little things that need to be looked at and maintained, and just thought about like that fact that there is overgrowth in areas that needs to be chopped back. So they were the main things, but
those sort of things I suspected, go over the whole trail.
Yes, I think there's some good work being done in the trail maintenance, and I guess we'll hear from Melanie shortly for the westward side.
Thanks, Jackie. Any other questions?
Can I just make a comment through the chair? So we talked about safety, and Jackie gets a quarterly customer feedback, and out of there's a lot of suggestions around improvements. So taking that and converting that into action is one thing we need to do. We are going to engage Jackie and one of our team, and potentially Richard from Destination Westland, to do a safety audit for us and look at all the signage and other impacts that have come out of recent survey results. So that's will happen in the next couple of months, hopefully.
So through the chair, can I just say that that survey data is monthly, it's not quarterly, and it's one of the things that you don't see that the Trail Trust does. So we have a responsibility. MB need at least 300 done a year. They want all the trails to do at least 500 a year. So we at the moment sit on the top of that for all trails in New Zealand. So again, this comes back to our vision of overall sort of the benchmark of being the point of excellence for it. So we have maintained that, but there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes in collecting that data, collecting that information up. So I have many places, or a number of places, that collect emails and send them through to me. When I can, I also collect them up myself out on the trail, and feeding that information through. So, and it is really valuable. So it's one of those hidden things that takes quite a lot of time that we do, and suddenly these reports spit out. Well, that's actually where they come from. MB indicate, the GetSmart who run those indicate that I think they think there's about a 40% fill out rate. So if you can imagine, that's quite a lot of emails that we have to upload continually to get that information.
Any further questions there? Thank you, Jackie. Good report. Someone like to move. We've received Jackie's report. And a seconder. No. Those in favour, say aye. Aye. Carried. Now the next report is from Mel Anderson, but she's running late. So what will we do?
Could I make a recommendation?
Yes.
So she's in transit at the moment. I think the weather in transit is going to be a bit difficult today. Can I suggest we send out a report from her only post this meeting to all committee members in terms of maintenance that is occurring? Just so that she hasn't got a written report to table. It's going to be a bit of
Yeah.
So we'll request a formal written one to go out post this meeting. That suits committee.
Yep, I'm good with that.
Unless she joins us in the near future.
Okay. So we'll need to move out of the public excluded. Sorry, you move go into a public excluded. That's right. So we might have a mover there, please. Jackie. And a second. I'll second that myself. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Carried.